When fine art walks into the Pawn Star shop, you know something big is about to happen. From lost masterpieces to pieces with shocking backstories, some of the craziest negotiations ever filmed involved art worth millions. These are the most insane art deals in Pawn Star's history, and they prove that beauty really does come at a price. Let's dive right into it, shall we? Now this lovely lady walks into the pawn shop holding one of the most antique weapons you will ever find. She meets Chum at the counter, and Chum can't hide his excitement when he sets his eyes on the weapon. The lady brings in a Civil War Palmer gun, and I must say, the gun looks very old. The lady is hoping to make some money from its sale, but she has no idea how much it's worth.
There's Palmer on it, so I don't know about, but what do you know?
This is as far as I know. There's some date, description.
Well, this lady already has quite a lot of things she wants to do with the money she makes from selling the gun. She claims to have done some research on the gun, and from her findings, there are not a lot of the guns out there. She does not skip the fact that the gun is very old, but she also claims that the gun is in very good condition. Clearly, we'd need an expert to be the judge of that, but first, let's hear a little more about their weapon.
Be kind of to hook it up waistline. 1865 would put it right around the Civil War.
Right, yeah, I think that was the final year. The Civil War.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure when this lady was given the gun, she was speechless. Chum talks a little about where the gun came from and when it was made. He then asks the lady where she got the gun from, and she says that she did a favor for one of her friends. And in appreciation for the favor, her friend gave her the gun from one of her father's collections. Now that's not the type of gift you get to receive every day.
You know what? I think we should go hard or go home. I think 20,000.
I mean, this is a beautiful gun. It's got some things on it.
Did that come as a surprise? Oh, hell no. They wrapped up their conversation about how the lady got the gun. Chin then proceeds to ask the lady how much she wants for the gun. She tells him that she's just going to hit the nail on the head and tells Chum that she is looking to get $20,000 for the weapon. Chum hears that, and he immediately knows that he has to get his expert to come take a look at the weapon. Well, let's see what the expert has to say about the gun.
So, tell Alex what you think you have here.
It's a Civil War Palmer gun, that's what I think it is, and from 1865.
Do you mind if I it up?
Go for it.
So,
I guess that's why he is called an expert. The man just knows everything there is to know about guns. The expert comes to the shop, and the lady tells him what she thinks the gun is. The expert picks up the gun and immediately says that it's in great condition. He then goes on to say that the gun is a very important firearm in the history of America because it was the very first bolt-action firearm that used a metallic cartridge.
of them in 864, and the intended purpose was for their cap. What happened is they're not finished, made in Windsor, Vermont, 1865.
That's the first good sign that this gun might actually be worth the amount the lady wants for it. The expert goes on to say that the US government ordered 1,000 of the guns in 1864. The guns weren't ready until 1865 and were delivered to the US government after the Civil War had ended, meaning that the guns were never used in the Civil War. This makes the gun a very important item to collectors.
The inside looks as good as the outside.
Fingers crossed.
I'm gonna just take a quick look at the bore. Oh, my shot. Once they've been fired a lot, the bore darker.
Music to the ears of this lady, I'm sure. The customer picks up the gun and begins his inspection. He takes a look at the bore and is surprised by what he sees. He says that once a gun has been fired a lot, the bore of the gun gets darker and a little bit mutated. But when he checks, the bore of this gun is very crisp, meaning that this gun may never have been fired since it was made. Now let's get down to how much the gun is worth.
They're actually worth.
Like $20,000.
No, it's not that. That's a lot. But certainly.
I'm not gonna lie, I was kinda sad when the expert valued the gun. Now the expert wrapped up with inspecting the gun, and like he said, it's in very good condition. Chum asked the expert what the gun could be valued at, and he said the gun could be valued anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000. But to give this particular gun a value, he would have to fire it and know if it works well. This lady can kiss her dreams of making $20,000 from the sale of the gun goodbye.
How's it going?
Hi, you.
Okay, so this is the weird wasn't in the Civil War.
Yeah, and it's a pretty ingenious design, so through it. Additionally,
Pristine condition sounds like music to my ears. From what the expert just said, it looks like this gun is about to make a loud kaboom. It was very hilarious that Rick referred to the gun as the weird Civil War gun that was never used in the Civil War. It's not like he is wrong, the gun was actually never used in the Civil War. Everything seems to be in place. Now let's see how this gun fires, shall we?
so provisions in the Civil War were so one of the provisions wouldn't spoil were pickled items such as pickled eggs. And so I made a pyramid. If I hit it,
Right on target. I am always amazed by how locked on this expert's aim is. The man just never misses a target. He lined up a couple of pickled eggs into a pyramid and told everyone to wear their protective gear just in case things went wrong. He loads the gun, aims for the pyramid of pickled eggs, and sends them into the air as he fires the gun. Well, now they know the gun works pretty well. It's fine for them to get down to how much the gun is going to be sold for.
Exploded on done.
That was excellent.
Oh, good one. I like it.
Okay.
What do you think it's, Alex?
Pluses about it, very rare.
That seems like a pretty reasonable price to me, but we all know that Rick is not going to give the lady the entire $7,500. The expert wraps up his inspection and testing of the gun, and he goes on to tell Rick that a reasonable price for your gun would be $7,500. I have a feeling that this lady is going to tell Rick that she wants the amount the expert just said, but let's see how the bargaining conversation goes.
What do you think?
It's cool and it will probably take a while, but 99.9% of people out there don't give you $4,000 for it.
I think I'm also going to grab some pickled egg sandwiches. If you ask me, I'd say this was a pretty good deal. The expert left, and they got straight into talking about prices. Rick offered the lady $4,000 for the gun, but she said that it was kind of small. Rick then went up to $5,000 and the lady after, seeing that she did not know much about the gun and was probably not going to do anything with it. Not a bad deal.
What was that?
This is a World War I flamethrower.
Okay. For a second, I thought you were the exterminator or something.
Well, we could do a little exterminating around here. I don't know how much your pawn shop.
If everyone owned a flamethrower, I'm sure the whole world would be up in flames. How on earth did this dude manage to get his hands on a flamethrower? That's the big question. Now he comes into the pawn shop and he tells Rick that he has a World War I flamethrower that he would like to sell. Rick is amazed by the fact that someone walks into the pawn shop with an item that goes as far back as World War I. That's not something you see every day.
Flamethrower. I think that there was gasoline in one tank and then it mixed with some sort of gel so that when they shot it and it flew out, that it stuck to whatever.
Haha, what would you expect from an item that's that old? It's definitely going to have a couple of holes in it. Rick takes a look at the flamethrower and his mind is blown away. He even goes on to say that nobody should be at the receiving end of whatever comes out of the flamethrower. The only issue with this flamethrower is that it looks like some of its parts are welded, and he does not know if it's even going to work.
I think this thing is cool as hell and it's beyond badass. But what concerns me is whether it's legal to own something like this. I can't imagine walking down the street with it. These tanks really...
I honestly would not expect less from Rick. He is pretty intrigued by the weapon, and he thinks it's badass. What worries him is the fact that he does not know if it's legal to own something like this. No one wants to have something that could send them to prison. Being that he does not know much about the weapon, he wants his expert to come take a look and let him know all he needs to know about the flamethrower.
It's a flamethrower.
Yeah, that much you got right. I'm president of Weapons Specialists Limited. I study weapons, mostly the evolution from their rudimentary beginning, be it a stone knife or axe, up to modern weaponry like rockets.
And this is why Rick always makes sure he has an expert on standby to come check items he knows nothing about. Rick's expert makes it to the pawn shop and is also intrigued by the sight of the flamethrower. The customer who brought it in says that he believes the flamethrower was used in World War I. The expert then says that it was not used in World War I, but was actually used in World War II, alongside the BM2s.
Shooting a garden hose, but you got your garden hose under pressure from the water main. Then when you pull the trigger on the igniter, that makes a little spark that lights the liquid as it's coming out under pressure. So it's just like a water hose, except it turns into fire.
Okay.
Well, thank goodness the flamethrower is no longer in use. You can tell this thing was catastrophic on the battlefield. The expert says that there were a lot of downsides to having it use a flamethrower. The flamethrowers were used to dig out enemies from places that they dug in deep, but once they were out on the battlefield, anyone carrying a flamethrower became a walking bomb. All it took was one bullet to make them go kaboom.
Question, is this legal to own?
Oh, sure, because they've cut a hole here. That would make this not operable, so it would just a couple of tanks. This is not real. Somebody made a molding or a casting of what the actual, it looks exactly like it. It's accurate.
Ouch, that's got to sting. Looks like Rick's gut was right when he felt that the flamethrower did not look like it worked. Rick asks the expert if it's legal to own something like that, and he says yes. The expert then inspects the flamethrower properly, and the first part of the flamethrower that he picks up is a fake. He says that it looks like the exact same thing with an actual flamethrower, but that part happens to have been molded.
Something like this would be for a museum, maybe some collectors who couldn't get this part because this is the hardest part to find.
Okay.
Good ones in working order, especially the collectors that really go for them, can go as high as $12,000.
I guess that's a good sign. Rick still seems very interested in the flamethrower, even though he knows it's not the real deal. The expert puts a price tag on the flamethrower, and he says that due to the fact that this particular flamethrower has a couple of holes in it, and the major part is a fake, he would value it at $2,000 or maybe even $2,500. Now, it's time to see what Rick means when he says he wants to get it for the right price.
But that's a best case scenario.
How about 1,500?
I got to make a profit, so how about 500? I mean, I don't know how long this thing's going to sit here.
Well, you know, I thought it was pretty cool, and I know a lot of people are going to think it was really cool too.
And we have a happy customer. For a second there, I thought he was going to walk away with the flamethrower. The expert leaves and they begin to speak on the price at which they want to make a deal. Rick started by saying he would buy the flamethrower for $500, and as you'd expect, the customer told him it was too small. They go back and forth for about a minute, and in the end, they shake hands on $1,000 and the customer seems to be happy with that price. Well, let's see what's next.
We have here.
It is a double barrel pistol knife. Very unique.
I mean, you carry this.
Every lady should. I'm here to sell my knife.
A lady who knows how to spend her money. But what on God's green earth is she doing with a weapon like that? She makes her way to the pawn shop and she meets up with Rick at the counter. She tells him that she has a one-of-a-kind weapon that will blow his mind. She brings out a double-barreled pistol knife. Have you ever heard of something like that before? I get you haven't. Rick sees the weapon and has to ask the lady if she carries it on a regular basis.
So do you know anything about her, anything like that?
No, don't know anything that. Don't have any paperwork. My late uncle got it from an auction, found a weapon.
I have to agree with Rick on that one. The gun looks like it's going to be stressful to reload. Oftentimes, guns like this are usually fired once and then turned into a knife. Rick says that guns like this were popular back in the day. He has no idea why they made guns that way, but he knows that he has seen a lot of them come into the pawn shop. But let's be honest, this gun is actually very cool.
Beyond that, I do not have a clue. How much you want?
I'm looking at 1,500.
It's probably a reasonable number. Do you mind? Call a buddy. My buddy Alex, he does.
The expert always has to get involved. Rick does not know so much about this gun, and that comes as a surprise because Rick usually knows quite a lot about guns. He asks the lady how much she wants for the double-barreled pistol knife, and she says that she is looking to get at least $1,500 for the gun. Rick then tells her that he needs to get his expert to verify if the gun could actually go for that price. Well, let's see what he has to say.
I'm convinced this was owned by a pirate. Do you know anything about this?
I mean, the pirate thing, I think, is related. So, look, if it was pirate, I think it would probably flintlock, not cushion.
I'm just
You know, it's neat.
I guess that's why Rick went to pick up the magnifying glass. The expert makes his way to the pawn shop to take a look at the gun. Rick then hands the expert a magnifying glass to check if the gun has any markings on it since the lady who brought it in has no idea. The expert sees a marking he recognizes, and it's a proof mark for the Liège, which is a city in Belgium. Now, it's a city that's very much known for their huge gum-making skills.
In this exact type of pistol. Patented in 1840, but he worked all the way to the end of it. It's very likely his, and if it's not, it's a Belgian copy of the use these. I'm assuming these are hammers.
Well, that's a first. Most of the time, customers who bring in their weapons are usually excited to see them tested at the firing range, but not this lady. She just wants to get the gun out of her closet. The expert, however, says that the gun is collectible, but right now it does not seem to be in the best condition. He then goes on to say that he also does not see any reason why his gun is not going to fire, but first he would have to inspect the barrel.
That says maybe it'll fire, maybe it won't.
Okay.
$3,000.
All right. If I get it, I will let you know.
To meet you. Good
Nice
luck.
to meet you. Thank you.
Now you're asking $1,500. I'll give you like $1,600 for it.
Smart choice. I bet she already knew that she was not going to get more than $2,000 for the gun. I'm still surprised that she does not want to see the gun tested at the firing range. Since the lady didn't want to see the gun tester, the expert gave them a price and he valued the gun at $3,000. Rick and the lady did a little back and forth on the price for the double-barreled pistol knife, and they ended up shaking hands on $2,000.
Actually, it's a knife gun.
All right.
Yeah, because knife is a lot bigger than the gun, so I think we called it a knife gun, not a gun knife.
I agree.
It's your world, man.
So I paid $2,000 for it.
The lady who brought in the double-barreled pistol knife might not want to see it fired, but you can bet that Rick definitely wants to. After the deal, Rick decided to head down to the firing range and meet his expert to have the gun tested. The expert told Rick that he had inspected the gun properly and was sure that it could fire. Corey is still very confused on how a gun can also be used as a knife.
Gun knife or knife gun or whatever to American flag page.
So I figured that is a knife. I wanted to show you that it could cut, so still sharp. And so I chose the Kate, this one, and two targets.
I can't lie, this is absolutely hilarious. Now I wish I was with them at the firing range, getting to test the gun and have some cake. The expert tells Rick and Corey that the reason he is using cakes as the target to be shot at is because the gun has a knife and knives are used to cut cakes. In a way, it kind of makes sense. It's still very funny that he said each layer of cake represents Rick's freedom from his 3 divorces. Even Rick found the joke to be very hilarious.
Yeah, the knife's good, so hopefully the guns are good.
All right, so we're gonna load this thing up?
Yeah. Eyes and ears, everybody.
All right. We ready to go?
Wow, wow, wow. That was one hell of a shot. I am speechless as to the damage that the gun just made. It's mind-blowing that a gun that small packed so much force to give something this big. You can see how impressed Rick is. I'm sure he was not expecting the gun to have such a loud kaboom and damage effect. That is just incredible. Man, now I wish the lady were here to see the gun tested. Who knows? Maybe she might just have changed her mind on selling the double-barreled pistol knife.
That was an amazing $2,000.
It was a good deal at $2,000. I think based on how...
Well, that was actually a waste of good cake. But then again, was it really a waste of good cake? I mean, we wouldn't have known how damaging the gun was if the cake was not destroyed in that manner. The expert goes on to tell Rick that buying the gun for $2,000 was a pretty good deal. He also says that Rick can actually sell the gun for at least $4,000 since the gun works. I guess that's a win-win.
Hey, what do we have here?
They are,
They're disturbing is what they are.
disturbing. I'm coming into the pawn shop to try to sell my antique handcuffs.
I thought I was the only one who felt that way. Those handcuffs look crappy as hell. The person who designed them needs to be asked a lot of questions. Now this elderly man makes his way to the pawn shop. He shows Rick his metal hand restraints and Rick finds them to be very creepy. The man claims to not know what they are, but he bought them because his daughter was going to prom and he wanted to give them to her boyfriend as a gift.
Would you like to try them on?
Not really.
Come on. Keep your thumb down there.
Yeah, that's not gonna work. Ow, ow.
Weird. I mean, what could anyone possibly do to have their hands fixed into these kinds of handcuffs? That's just pure torture. Rick tries to fit his hands into the metal hand restraints, and as you can see, they can't even close. For the first time, Rick is faced with an item he has never seen before. Even the guy who brought them in says he does not know a lot about the handcuffs.
1925, and they only got used just a very limited time, about less than 5 years.
What were those used for?
This was for prisoner transportation, locked the entire hand, so escape was virtually impossible.
Why did they stop using them?
Haha, I wouldn't want to be on duty when they bring in the prisoners. Since Rick had no idea what the item was, he decided to bring in his expert to come take a look at the metal hand restraints. The expert shows up and picks up the handcuff. He refers to them as rare McKinsey mitts. They were made in 1925 and they were only used for a very limited period, which was less than 5 years. Their major use was for prison transportation.
These are very rare and highly collectible. They made approximately 50 of these.
Wow.
In an auction setting, these could be $3,500 to $4,000.
Wow. The moment I heard the expert say they were worth...
Well, that clearly changes the customer's point of view. You can bet that he is going to ask Rick for more money. The expert concludes his inspection of the item, and he tells Rick that the metal hand restraints could sell for as high as $4,000 at auction houses. Only 50 of these were made, and they happen to be very, very rare. Well, let's see how much Rick is willing to pay for the item.